Good morning. It's Friday, January 16th, 2026. I'm meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story. I am recording this from a hotel room. I don't have my good studio microphone with me, so apologize. The audio probably just a little more boomy and echoey than you're used to, but we'll get through it. That north wind is blowing. I got to tell you, I'm not far from you guys right now. I'm in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Spent the day in Lancaster, Minnesota yesterday, which is just felt like I could throw a rock across the Canadian border. So I am enjoying this with you all, this cold north wind that is blowing, and it is blowing all the way down into the central United States here, delivering shots of cold, coldest in the east, and that will be the case here through the weekend into early next week, and light doses of snow. There will be snowflakes flying over the next 10 days, but unfortunately, we just continue to wait to establish a more productive jet stream pattern across North America that could get some big storm systems rumbling through. So it's clipper systems for the near term, for the medium term, until proven otherwise. 10-day precipitation totals. This is going back the last 10 days. Again, pretty dry across the Canadian prairies down into the northern plains. You can find a couple areas here that have seen anywhere from a half an inch to maybe a few tenths, but those are the rarities. You've got a lot of folks here that have been completely dry, maybe just a couple hundredths here, and with snow we're talking about maybe a couple of centimeters, something like that, just enough to kind of blow around in the wind, not really enough to coat the ground here in any sort of meaningful way. So kind of taking a look at the modeled snow depth across the US and Canadian prairie right now, a big lack of that across the prairies into the northern plains. You head north of Highway 16, you can get into a little bit better snowpack. You can also find some scattered areas with a good snowpack across southeast Saskatchewan into southern portions of Manitoba. But really been a struggle here going back the last several weeks, and that looks like this pattern, while it's going to evolve slightly, the trajectory of the jet stream doesn't really change a whole lot through the end of January into the early part of February. So I don't have anything to point to during this forecast video that tells you this is when the moisture is going to come, this is when the big snow is going to come. This is really going to be a discussion of clipper systems and shots of cold air across the prairie. So again, here's the wind flow right now. That wind is blowing out of the northwest behind a big cold front that swept through over the last 24 to 48 hours. And we're going to see a series of these fronts riding over the top of this big ridge out west. I'll show you in a moment. Well, you can see it here with the satellite picture. The big clockwise flow around that ridge over the Pacific, nudging way up into Alaska. So we got these little swirls coming down, these little clipper systems, and this one's bringing a big shot of cold air. It's also had some snow squalls along with it. So you get some bursts of snow and some high winds. It was ripping outside the hotel here in Grand Forks when I woke up this morning. I had to step outside and get some video of that sideways snow out there. But you can kind of see through this darker pink and blue shaded area here. This is bitterly cold air. This is the surface being reflected in some snowpack. But, if you go back about a year ago, as we went through last January to early February in 2025, this big cold snowpack was all the way down here into the northern plains of the U.S. Wow, look at that. You can see this is probably some blowing dust associated with the cold front that's blasting through. That'll be interesting to see when the sun comes up. We may have some dust blowing around in parts of the southern plains of the U.S. So there's certainly stuff going on. There's a big front across the Atlantic Ocean. This was hypothetically a storm that could have got the east coast of the U.S. This week here, but just did not have the pattern come together because it's just dominated by the ridge over the Pacific and the big trough here over, the Hudson Bay over Canada. Really, it's a big one. It's going to be dropping down into the central U.S. over the next 48 to 72 hours. The radar right now, you got some flurries, some snow squalls, some snow showers with wind blowing from Regina over to Winnipeg. Quiet from Regina over to Calgary. Temperatures, again, minus 15 to minus 20 across parts of eastern Saskatchewan into central and southern Manitoba. A little bit warmer, minus 5 to minus 10 as you make your way over to southern parts of almost at Alabama, of Alberta. You go ahead and loop this through the weekend into early next week, and you can see a series of fronts here. The first one Friday, here comes another one Sunday into Monday. It'll be pretty cold just about everywhere on Monday morning. A little bit warmer as you get over toward the mountains in Alberta. We'll take a look at the snow forecast here. And again, the precipitation you get as these fronts sweep through, these little clippers, you get a light dose of some snow. It's windy. You got snow showers flying out there, but it's not anything that's really, stacking up into any sort of meaningful snowfall. We're talking about 5 maybe 6 or 7 centimeters of snow through Monday across parts of southern Manitoba. A trace to a couple of centimeters across southeastern parts of Saskatchewan, and then really pretty dry as you make your way further west from there. We'll look at the European model, the same time frame. So this is through Monday, January 19th. And then as I add in the next week, so now we're going through Friday, January 23rd, not much change. I mean, you're expanding the light blues on here, which is talking about 5 to 10 total centimeters of snow over the next 7 days. And then I'll zoom out and expand it even further to the next 10 days. So now through January 26th. And again, you got a lot of gray and light blue on there. Would you look at the scale on the bottom? We're talking about anywhere from, a trace to a couple centimeters up to 5 to 10 centimeters on the high side. So this is certainly a time of year where we would maybe be expecting to see some of those darker purples into the pinks here, talking about 15 to 30 centimeters of snow over the next 7 to 10 days. But the pattern is just completely misaligned for that kind of thing. It's dominated by an incredibly amplified, I mean, this is a very amplified, when I say that, I mean wavy jet stream pattern with this ridge. You see the thin blue line that kind of runs there, that 540 line. That is kind of what we roughly use to demark where you're going to be, south of that line, you would be above freezing and have liquid precipitation. Then north of that line, you would be below freezing and have frozen precipitation, snowfall. So we're nudging that 549 line all the way up into Alaska, all the way up toward getting close to the Beaufort Sea here. But then you look at the trajectory of the flow that comes down through Manitoba, and it's just northerly flow coming straight out of the Arctic. And I animate this, and the pattern wobbles a little bit, but it stays the same for much of the next 10 to 15 days. There's a little bit of a difference here as you get toward the very end. So let's walk it back. This is present day. This is through the weekend. This is getting into early next week. This is now Wednesday, Thursday. So this will be, as I'm recording this video for you a week from today, the model's forecasting a very similar pattern, maybe a little bit colder across the entirety of the prairie, with this huge upper level low kind of dropping from the Hudson Bay down toward the US-Canada border. This would take us through the weekend, next weekend. This is January 25th, 26th, 27th. You see another upper level low kind of reestablishing itself here, and you've still got that northwesterly flow racing across the prairie. So if we wanted big storm systems, you want those big Colorado lows lifting up into the northern plains, bringing that big shield of snow, something more meaningful, we would want southwesterly flow in the jet stream. We would want a big trough located right here. We would want a ridge over here. So you want trough west, ridge east if you want meaningful precipitation across North America. And this is the opposite of that, and it really holds true as far out as this model reliably goes. So I'm all the way to the end here, the last day of January. You've got a little bit more in the way of ridging, kind of nudging up here across the western U.S. The trough is maybe the bulk of it pivoting here. So this is perhaps the beginnings of a pattern change. But as I look further out here, there's nothing for me to really hang my hat on with any sort of confidence. So this is looking at the jet stream winds, just the raw jet stream winds. You can see them coming all the way up into Alaska, kind of kissing the Arctic's ocean up there, and then coming straight from north to south across the prairie. That's a way to deliver a lot of cold but dry air to the prairies and parts of the northern plains. So as I animate the snowfall or the precipitation type forecast, it is dominated by snow, but it's light snow. You can just watch these lows getting kind of yanked out of the Arctic. Here's that one passing through now. Here comes the next one over the back half of the weekend. You can just kind of follow them from north to south, each one bringing a little bit of light snow. But as I look at really the next 30 days from the European weeklies, kind of our longer range model, you see the prairie shaded white there, but that is just kind of saying, near average. I don't put much stock in that. I would want to see a much louder signal there if I'm going to start speculating that we've got big storm systems rolling through. This kind of says the same thing. Frequent light doses of snow that the model is kind of putting as near average precipitation, but in reality, it's very light. It's frustrating, and it's likely going to be another 30 days or so of people asking me, where's the snow? Where's the big meaningful storm systems? And until further notice, I don't see it. Big picture, I think there's hope, but I think it's going to be a frustratingly long road to get there. Again, temperature is going to be wobbling a little bit as this ridge kind of fluctuates. It's going to be cold, Probably through the end of January into the beginning part of February. The European weeklies go after a little bit of a warm up here in kind of the second week of February. We'll kind of see about that. I think that's, let's not get hung up on it. You see cold kind of returning here in the last week of February. I think February is going to be cold across the prairie. We'll have to see if we're going to get some meaningful snow to establish itself across the region. Calgary, your next 10 days looking increasingly cold as we get toward the end of the week next weekend. Edmonton, of course, this all aligns with that trough kind of expanding across the region, maybe shifting south and west a little bit slowly through next week. So just about everyone going to be experiencing the bitterly cold air over the next 7 to 10 days. Edmonton, you're going to be down in the minus 25 to minus 30 range next weekend with highs around minus 20. Same thing, Saskatoon, talking about those minus 30 overnight lows over the weekend, potentially into next weekend. Very similar here, Regina. It's cold. Winnipeg, you're also cold. Those lows minus 20 to minus 25. Even colder as we get toward the end of next week. So my message to you, cold, windy, definitely over the next 10, 14, maybe 20, 30 days. Do we have meaningful snow coming? You've got flurries, you got windy snow showers. You're going to get some snow on the ground, but I am going to be looking out into the crystal ball here for any sort of big low pressure system lumbering across North America, be it across the prairie or across the United States. Both of us badly need it, and that's what we'll be looking for over the next couple of months. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you again next Friday.